Welcome, listener. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into Azure API Management. You might know it as APM. Specifically, we're looking at how it really supercharges your applications that are running on Kubernetes. Now, this might sound pretty technical, I know, but if you're already working with microservices, maybe in AKS, this is crucial stuff. It's really about taking those raw service endpoints you have and turning them into something more polished, secure, and frankly, easier for others to use. Our mission today, to unpack why APM is such a strategic piece for Kubernetes and how it, integrates and boosts what you're already doing.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how APM gives you this central intelligent control point for all your APIs. It kind of elevates them, right? From just being network endpoints to actual managed products. It's pretty much indispensable if you're serious about optimizing services you've built on Kubernetes.
Okay, let's unpack that because, we've probably all been there, right? You've got a bunch of microservices, each maybe doing its own thing, and you're trying to get them talking securely, efficiently. Before we jump into APM as the solution, what kind of challenges or maybe just headaches do organizations usually face when they try to manage APIs for Kubernetes apps without something like APM?
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. Without a proper API gateway, you can find yourself in a real bind. We're talking, first off, significant security risks. Think about exposing an internal Kubernetes API directly. It could be vulnerable to unauthorized access, maybe even denial of service type abuse if you don't have good rate limiting.
Right. That direct exposure feels risky.
Exactly. And then there's just the sheer complexity of management, trying to handle different API versions, the updating security policies consistently across maybe dozens of services, or even just keeping documentation up to date. It becomes this huge error-prone task. Really slows things down.
Mm-hmm. Documentation is always a pain point.
It is. And then scalability. Sure, Kubernetes scales your pods, your containers, but APM can shield your backend services. It can absorb bad requests or excessive traffic before it even hits your pods. It offloads important work. And maybe most importantly for adoption, without a developer portal, how do your consumers, internal teams, external partners actually find and learn how to use your APIs? It creates a lot of friction.
Okay, so it definitely sounds like a problem that needs a specialized tool, and that, I guess, is where Azure API Management comes in. So beyond just calling it a gateway, what exactly is this service doing that, say, Kubernetes on its own doesn't quite cover?
Well, Azure APM is essentially that intelligent middleman. It's a fully managed cloud service that acts as your front door. And it's a game changer because it tackles those pain points we just talked about head on. For security, it gives you robust tools authentication like Azure AD or Oath, authorization, fine-grained rate limiting, protecting your backend APIs before the traffic gets anywhere near Kubernetes.
So protective layer, basically.
Exactly. And it's built to be highly scalable itself, so it handles high traffic loads and works with Kubernetes scaling, not against it. It also massively simplifies managing the API lifecycle. Things like versioning, running V1 and V2, simultaneously applying policies, handling documentation. It centralizes all that. And that developer portal we mentioned, APM provides one out of the box. It turns your APIs into products people can easily discover, understand, and test. Big win for developer experience. Plus, it integrates really smoothly with AKS and other Azure stuff, so it feels like a natural part of your setup.
Okay, this is where I think it gets really interesting for a lot of us. How does this theoretical gateway, this middleman, actually work in practice with Kubernetes apps? Let's get into the nuts and bolts a bit.
Sure, it kind of breaks down into three main concepts, I'd say. First is API publishing. This is how you make your APIs available through APM. You usually define them maybe by importing an open API spec, Swagger file. Then APM becomes this smart router. It takes the incoming calls and knows how to forward them to the right backend service running inside your Kubernetes cluster. That backend could be exposed via a standard Kubernetes service or maybe an ingress controller.
Okay, so APM knows where to send the traffic within Kubernetes.
Precisely. And the developer portal is key here. It's not just static docs, it's interactive. Imagine you've got a, say, complex order processing API running in AKS. A client developer can go to the portal, see the spec, and actually make test calls right there in the browser. It really speeds up integration.
Got it. So that's getting the APIs out there and discoverable. What about keeping them, healthy and secure day to day?
Right, that brings us to the second area. Management and security. This is huge. On the management side, APM lets you apply policies. These are incredibly powerful. You can transform request or response formats, cache responses to reduce load on your Kubernetes pods, or, as we mentioned, handle versioning smoothly. You can even bundle APIs into products with different access levels or rate limits.
Ah, so you could have like a basic tier and a premium tier for the same underlying API.
Exactly, you manage access that way. And then there's the security aspect within this. APM gives you a whole toolkit. Authentication using Azure AD, simple API keys, OAuth 2.0 for more complex scenarios. And the rate limiting and quotas are crucial. You could say, this partner API can only make 100 calls per minute, or only allow access from these specific IP addresses. It's very granular control, protecting your AKS services.
Okay, strong controls there. And the final piece, how does it all connect up and how do you keep an eye on performance?
That would be integration and monitoring. The integration part is setting up APM to talk to your Kubernetes backends. You define a backend in APM that points to your Kubernetes service endpoint or your ingress address. It's pretty straightforward. We should also mention you can manage APM configurations using infrastructure as code approaches, integrating it into your CI/CD pipelines, which is best practice. Then, for monitoring, APM itself gives you really useful built-in analytics, usage stats, latency, error rates. You see that right in the Azure portal.
So you get immediate visibility.
Yes. And for deeper analysis or alerting, you integrate it with Azure Monitor. A pro tip here. Don't just look at the dashboards. Set up alerts in Azure Monitor based on APM metrics, like alert me if the P95 latency for this API goes above 500 milliseconds, or alert if the 4x its error rate spikes. That way, you're proactive. You can spot problems brewing in your API layer or even your backend AKS services.
Right, turning data into action. Okay, that makes sense. So pulling this all together, when you're deciding how to expose your Kubernetes APIs, what's the bottom line? When should you absolutely reach for APM versus maybe just sticking with direct Kubernetes exposure, like through an ingress?
Yeah, that's the key decision point. It really boils down to your requirements, especially around external exposure and complexity. You definitely want to use APM when you need robust security for APIs facing the outside world or even just other internal teams. Think authentication, serious rate limiting, IP filtering. APM excels here for your AKS apps. It's also pretty much essential if you're managing multiple API versions, need complex request response transformations via policies, or crucially, if you need to provide that polished developer portal experience for consumers.
So for anything beyond simple internal stuff, basically.
Pretty much. If you're just building, say, very simple internal APIs, maybe used only by one or two other services within your trusted network, and you have minimal security or management needs, or perhaps you're just experimenting and learning Kubernetes, then maybe direct exposure via ingress could work initially. But honestly, as soon as you need proper security, controls, versioning, or that good developer experience, trying to build all that yourself on top of Kubernetes becomes way more complex and costly than just leveraging APM. The value proposition for APM becomes very clear very quickly for most real-world scenarios involving AKS.
That's a great summary. What a fantastic deep dive. It's clear how Azure APM really does lift the burden of API management for Kubernetes. It makes things more accessible, way more secure, and honestly turns APIs into a strategic advantage, not just a technical necessity.
It really does. And maybe this leaves you, the listener, with a final thought to consider. How could adopting a proactive, well-managed API strategy using tools like APM do more than just secure your current apps? How might it fundamentally speed up future innovation by making it easier and safer for others, developers, partners, maybe even new business units to build upon your services? Think beyond just publishing an endpoint. Think about creating an empowering platform for others.